Hello, my friends. I'm Gio, and Bentley is right beside me. He's playing, so if you hear a few little noises, well, he's having fun. Let's get started with this week's story. Chapter 1. Dad said, "Benji, get a degree in business. You'll get rich." I did. Hated it. "Benji, you're not doing anything," my uncle said next. "You'll love the theater. Come help. I'll pay cash." Uncle manages the Sahara Sands Community Playhouse. He paid me a decent wage, not to balance the books, but to direct the stage crew, handle minor repairs, help out with whatever needs doing. Last night, Saturday, was the final showing of the autumn play, Something Rotten, a Shakespeare musical that had done surprisingly well. Sunday morning, the theater felt hollow and echoey, the way it always does after a closing night. The air still smelled faintly of hairspray, sweat, and the cheap vanilla candles the cast insisted on lighting backstage. I pushed the broom along the edge of the stage, sweeping up glitter, confetti, and whatever else had shaken loose from costumes. I softly sang the finale song under my breath. Catchy tune. It had been stuck in my head since curtain call. I liked to sing, I just wasn't any good at it, especially on stage. But I'm great when nobody but the broom is listening. The cast party had gone until 2 a.m. I could still hear the ghost of their laughter in the rafters. Like the building hadn't quite let go of the night yet. Later today, we'd begin set production for White Christmas, the musical, which would run from December through early January. The lumber for the new flats sat stacked near the wings, smelling like fresh pine and sawdust. A man walked in. Casual shorts, loose-fitting tee, a digital camera hung around his neck, a small notebook in his left hand. He wore the kind of glasses that turn dark outside and clear inside. The door let in a gust of cold morning air with him, sharp enough to raise goosebumps on my arms. Somebody must have left the door unlocked again. My reporter sense went off. I shrugged and kept sweeping. The man looked familiar. We'd been so crowded last night I wouldn't have remembered him from David Bowie if he'd been here. Kind of gave off that vibe, actually. Narrow face, sharp eyes, dark blonde hair a little unkempt. He surveyed the theater and the stage, taking pictures or writing notes. He stopped in front of the glass case holding the current poster and took a picture. Later this week, one of the hands would change it to next month's show. "May I recommend you keep your day job?" he said. Not exactly smiling, but not frowning either. "Can I help you?" I said, leaning on the broom. "You work here?" he called, walking over. I gestured to the broom. "Guess you do," he replied. "I recognize you. Weren't you manning the ticket booth last night?" "Until it closed at 8. You were here?" He nodded. "You didn't stick around for the cast party?" Best to smile. He didn't need to know I had morning shift at DIY Warehouse, my day job, and had to leave early. I gestured at the theater. Somebody must do the real work. Here I am. His smile seemed sincere. "You're not one of the stars?" "No," I said. "I'm Benji the Gopher. My uncle manages." "Name's Eric Carson. Will you answer a few questions about the play and the stars?" I held the broom with both hands and tried to take this guy's measure. "Sure." "Do you work with Harrison Beckham?" Of course he would ask about Harrison. That's all anybody cared about. He was our local star. Everyone expected him to go Hollywood or Broadway. I paused, leaning on the broom. "He did great last night. He's been in most of this year's productions. Should have seen him when he performed Peter Pan. Had the audience eating it up." "How is he to work with?" "Wouldn't know. He works on the stage. I do odd jobs." Eric nodded. Do you ever perform on stage? Not good enough, I said. If you want to know anything else, the crew will be here tonight practicing for the next show. Will you be around? Tomorrow, after work, I'll be helping build the new sets. Harrison will be here, and my uncle. You'll want to talk to them. I'll do that. And that was that. Except it wasn't that. Chapter 2. I work at DIY Warehouse to pay rent, and I'm the theater gopher guy to pay everything else. On show day, I went in before work and sometimes after the show. Stage sets, janitorial, ticket sales, and scheduling. Whatever my uncle needed. Monday, I worked morning shift, again, using the forklift to shovel the Halloween and Thanksgiving decorations into storage. After work, I stopped at Gordon's Gourmet Burgers to get a bacon cheddar burger and a strawberry cheesecake shake to take to the theater. Inside, a crew of 3 were hammering a staircase together. Eventually, it would connect to a balcony with a trapdoor for some special scene involving a ghost or something. It had to work silently for some spooky disappearing act. My uncle worked in the office, door open and yelling on his phone. The actors were on the stage rehearsing lines, the chorus of random voices echoing through the theater. Harrison stood near the piano practicing a song, his tenor voice rich in the noisy air. "Benji, grab that board by the curtain and bring it here," one of the workers on the stairs yelled. "Any nails by it?" "No," I yelled, grabbing the board. I snuck a glance over at Harrison. He wasn't just a great singer and performer. He was very easy on the eyes. 6'2", brown hair, a stage presence that commanded attention, immaculate hair, manicured hands, and clothes fresh off the shelves of Dolce & Gabbana. "Can't we get the piano tuned?" Harrison muttered. "Can't get a decent harmony." "I had it tuned a week ago," the piano player, Martha, answered. "Doesn't sound like it." Harrison was also married, had a wife, a daughter, and was on the path for fame and glory. I had a secret crush on him. Stupid, pointless, but crushes never were logical. I was holding one side of the staircase steady while someone made measurements when the reporter walked in. He glanced over at Harrison practicing, at the people on the stage, at the tables pushed to the side, making room for all the activity. His eyes stopped on those of us putting the stairs together, pausing a second on me. I nodded. He nodded. "Uncle's up in the office," I yelled. "Focus, Benji," the man measuring the stairs scolded. "It's leaning to the left." "Thanks," Eric yelled, disappearing in the direction of the office. "Who's that?" Harrison set the music down and looked my way. "Eric Carson," I said, stabilizing the stairs. "Reporter, I think. Was asking about you." 15 minutes later, we set the mostly completed set of stairs next to the space where the balcony would be. Eric emerged again, scanning the activity. Once again, his eyes landed on me. He took a seat and began making notes on a yellow pad. A large smile crossed Harrison's face. He stood a little taller and set his music down before sauntering around the group of us working on the stairs. He sauntered over to Eric and took a seat next to the reporter. Chapter 3. Uncle came out of the office, chewing on a baby carrot. He glanced at Eric and Harrison, then walked over to the piano and picked up the discarded music. Harrison noticed. Uncle turned to the piano player, and in his gruff voice said, "Mr. Carson wants us to switch it up. It's in C, right?" "Original key is in C," the piano player replied. "Let me hear." My uncle nodded at the piano player. She began playing. "Can you take it down into B major?" he said, pointing out something on the sheet music. The piano player scribbled a note on hers. "I haven't done this since my music theory class. I'll need a second." She began playing it, slowly, in the key of B major. "No offense, but this sounds like a horror movie. You sure this is what he wants?" Uncle nodded, humming along. Harrison looked up, the smile vanishing from his face. Uncle looked up. Harrison, try this. Why change it? Harrison asked. Consider it a request, Eric said. Uncle quickly replied, just show him you got the chops. Harrison tried to sing, but his notes, which were perfect in the original C major key, didn't flow in B major. Uncle frowned. Second time, Harrison almost had it. Piano's out of tune. It's hard to track. Eric raised an eyebrow. The piano player rolled her eyes but said nothing. It didn't concern me. I turned back to the crew. How far above the floor was the balcony? I think 8 feet is the limit, one of the crew snickered, where the audience might not see Harrison's pretty face. Let's shoot for 7, he said. From over by the piano came a shuffling of papers. I glanced over. Eric eyed Harrison, making notes on his paper. His eyes had that intense concentration look that Dad wore when Mom was about to buy an expensive purse and couldn't find the right color. Give me a second to get used to it. Harrison massaged his throat. You have any other singers here? Eric glanced back at his notes, frowning. None of the main cast has arrived yet, Uncle replied, then looked at me. Benji, you sing a little. Help us out. I'm not near as good as Harrison, I said. Uncle looked at Eric, then at me. I know, Benji. Just try. I haven't had any lessons, I said. I'm terrible, especially in front of people. Sandpaper over a tin can, one of the crew said, though it was teasingly. Everybody knew I tried, but I couldn't sing. Not like Harrison. Uncle gave me that impatient look. His frustrated sigh was as good as a punch to the gut. I walked over anyway. Chapter 4. Benji, do you know the song? Uncle asked, handing me the sheet music. Let's see. It's the love song sung on the balcony before the man goes off to war. I've heard it enough, I replied. Sing it in its regular key, Eric said. At a nod from my uncle, the piano player played the opening chord in C major. I sang the first line, but my voice wasn't smooth or polished, not like Harrison's. Lousy voice, Harrison whispered to my uncle. Now in B major, Eric said, rising to his feet. The piano player struck the chord. I hummed, found the center, and sang. Let's drop it further. G major, Eric said. Sing more than the first line this time. Try the first stanza. The piano player wrote several adjustments on her music. You're testing range and adaptability. Sneaky, she said, then slowly began transposing into the new key. She played, gaining confidence and speed as she moved through the song. I listened, adjusting rhythm and tone to mimic the drop in key, following the shift without thinking, and sang. Total trash, Harrison muttered. I can do that. Please do, Eric said. G major. Harrison tried, but the moment the chords changed, his voice stumbled. Eric didn't look surprised. Most singers have that problem. You sing beautifully, Harrison, but only in one narrow lane. Shift the key and you're lost. But my voice is better than Benji's. Only when we compare C major, Eric said. His voice is better in other keys. Eric turned to me. Benji, you've got Rod Stewart's emotional rasp, Kurt Cobain's raw depth, and Macy Gray's adaptability. That's rare. I blinked. What do you mean? You can't tell that by just listening to a few damn notes. I've had years of training. Harrison sputtered, his face reddening. I came here for Harrison, Eric said, turning to face me. But I'd like to hear you sing. His eyes settled on me. Chapter 5. I wasn't sure I believed him. I couldn't sing, not like Harrison, not like any of the other cast. Leaning against the piano, I read through the music, though I didn't actually see anything. Harrison stared razor-sharp daggers at me. Uncle only nodded. Harrison, Benji, let me introduce Eric Carson. He's a freelance talent scout. I'm looking for fresh voices, Eric said. The people I represent don't want cookie-cutter trendy voices you can find in any teenage heartthrob. They want voices that last 10 years, 20, maybe more. Something unmistakable, maybe even timeless. And? My uncle asked. Harrison, you have the training and experience, but lack the range and adaptability, Eric continued. Benji, you have the raw emotion that could make your voice unique, but you lack confidence and experience. Bottom line, Harrison said, slightly nodding as he folded his arms, will this lead to a recording contract? Maybe, Eric stated, his voice flat. Depends on if I am impressed. Your job is to impress me. Chapter 6. For the rest of the afternoon, until the cast arrived, Harrison and I sang. Sometimes we sang together, sometimes we sang different parts, sometimes we sang scales. Eric listened and made notes. Harrison had the voice, the training, and knew a ton of songs. I couldn't keep up. About 6, a satisfied Harrison took off. He had a family to take care of. Me, I had a sore throat. Uncle brought me a lemonade. I wandered to the guys. The balcony was up, stairs attached, and they were measuring for the railing. Eric was packing up his gear and nodded at me. You've got potential. That surprised me. I nodded, letting the lemonade soothe my throat. Look, he offered. I want to take you out to dinner. Not in some kind of weird talent scout hitting on someone kind of way, but just to talk. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. I definitely overused it this afternoon. He stood beside me, casually looking about the theater before meeting my gaze. I could say it's to give you pointers or suggest things you can do to improve your voice, but it's none of those. Why then? He swallowed, visibly, and looked at his feet. When he spoke, it held a note of vulnerability he hadn't shown the entire afternoon. I'll be blunt, because I don't know how to put it subtly. I want to get to know you. Like a date get to know you? My voice sounded hoarse. He smiled and rubbed his head. Yeah. And this isn't a line about a talent scout trying to get me into Hollywood? He softly chuckled. No, though I am a talent scout. My heart sped up. Was he asking what I think he was asking? If I said yes, I asked, does it affect my chances? No, I don't cross boundaries. Besides, I don't make the final choices. The powers that be do. So this is purely platonic. Eric raised his right hand. As much as an out to dinner can be. I promise to not make a move or do anything inappropriate. I swear on my grandma's grave. We sat in Guy Fieri's Vegas kitchen and bar, sharing a plate of trash-can nachos. Hardwood floors, wood-paneled walls, every table was full, and the air smelled of spiced meat and beer. Off the charts loud, spiked jazz blasted through the speakers, dishes and voice clattered constantly, and every 2 minutes one of the chefs yelled an order. The waitstaff all wore matching T-shirts with Guy Fieri's picture on the back. A million pictures decorated the walls of all the people Guy had met. A little display case held a replica of the red Camaro from diners, drive-ins, and dives. The staff were friendly, and the beer was Nevadan home-brewed. We ordered some kind of bacon, mac, and cheeseburger, complete with homemade hot sauce that promised you could belch fire. Eric and I sat opposite each other as a waitress set large plates filled with our meals on the table. We'd only made it through half the nachos. You need a refill on those beers, hon? Bring it on, Eric said, and put it all in my tab. Feeling rich? I asked. Expense account, he said. I'm wooing a potential candidate. Wooing? Was that business or something else? I chuckled. You ever going to tell me who's financing this whole operation? It can't be cheap. The Locke Foundation. I've never heard of them. A chef yelled an order behind us, but Eric didn't look away. Founded by Tomas and Colby Blake a year or two ago, we seek out talent that focuses on streaming services rather than concerts or albums. Tomas Blake? The singer? And his husband? I asked. My stomach flipped. Tomas Blake was practically a household name. Colby had shot to the top of the New York Times bestseller lists. Those weren't just names. They were American royalty. They signed my paychecks. Eric leaned back, smiling. His eyes met mine. His eyes crinkling. What was I doing here? Eating nachos with someone who worked for royalty? I fumbled for something coherent to say. All the work is digital? Eric took a nacho from the pile of trash can nachos and held it while he spoke. Concerts and CDs are expensive. Streaming has changed the music industry. New artists are premiering on YouTube and TikTok without having to deal with the overhead of a record company or worrying about marketing promotions. Bands are making it big? I asked. Look at Pentatonix. They became a YouTube sensation, rebuilding their career digitally. Justin Bieber, Charlie Puth, Alicia Cara, Soulja Boy, and those are just a few. Why do you think K-pop became so big so fast? BTS wouldn't be the overnight success they are without YouTube. The path to fame and fortune has completely changed. For all Eric's enthusiasm, something chilled inside me. Nerves? Fear? What had Grandma always said? If it looks like a duck, check if it quacks before buying it. I looked at the huge burger, then at the pile of nachos and folded my arms. Was I being played? Time for reality. My chest tightened. We both know I don't have the voice. I'm just a grunt, an average guy working 2 jobs. So what is this really about? Because it sure isn't music. There is no way someone in your position would be interested in someone like me. Chapter 8. The temperature around our table cooled. Eric's enthusiasm faltered. He leaned forward, placing his phone on the table. He paused, as if working a mental puzzle before nodding at the waiter. We need to take our meals to go. A tiny part of me panicked. Had I been too blunt? I had committed the #1 rule of a date, whether professional or casual. I had insulted the man paying the bill. What's going on? I asked. His smile seemed casual, but his eyes were grim. We need to talk. Seriously talk, and we can't do that in all this chaos. We were back in Eric's rental BMW, its seat warmers engaged. Neither one of us spoke. We pulled into Lorenzi Park and took our food to a nearby bench. Why are we here? I asked. Eric didn't answer. Once again, he pulled his phone out and buzzed through several videos before settling on one. He hit play. A man sang, a dusky voice, a touch sultry. He sung a cappella, an earnest vulnerability that evoked tears. Who is it? I asked. My cousin. Eric's voice choked. He looked at the lake, but he wasn't seeing the lake. Most talented man I ever knew. Knew? He was scouted and received a contract, was going somewhere, and then his record company decided his voice wasn't the direction they wanted. They cut him. But there was a surprise non-performance clause in the original contract. He couldn't perform for a year. The company didn't want him and made sure nobody else could use his voice either. When the year was up, my cousin had given up. He had stopped singing, stopped writing songs, stopped everything. He just quit? I asked. Eric took a final look at the man in the video before turning it off. He never came back from it. He used to play guitar. Hasn't touched it in years. What's he do now? I asked. He's an intern at Marston Brokerage. He doesn't create. He works spreadsheets and numbers. Does he miss it? I mean, singing and stuff? He never talks about it. A thin wind whistled through the palm fronds. Ducks floated lazily in the nearby pond. The silence was thick, though the nearby fire engine sirens ripped through the air. Wood smoke drifted lightly, along with the smell of barbecued hot dogs. I took a bite of the mac and cheeseburger, breathed in the quiet, and tried to steady myself. Finally, I broke the hush. It's horrible what happened to him, but what does that have to do with me, or Harrison, or anything? Eric searched through his gallery, pulled up a second video. This is why. He hit play. The sultry, earnest voice sang, this time with music, as beautiful, as full of emotion as the previous video. The piano was gentle, intimate, unmistakable, the voice heartfelt. Harrison had been practicing this song this afternoon, but it wasn't Harrison's voice. I knew that voice before I knew why. I glanced at the video, and my breath caught. It wasn't Eric's cousin. It was me. Eric's voice softened. His hand inched toward mine, and he lightly placed it on mine. I came for Harrison, but I stayed for you. Chapter 9. Eric showed up at the theater every day. I'd find him there, already working with Harrison when I arrived after my shift at DIY Warehouse. I tried not to be jealous, because he was only doing his job. I barely knew him anyway, so what could I be jealous of? Still, I resented that he spent hours with Harrison while I had to work. Late November meant Christmas trees and decorations. All hands were scheduled. Harrison had changed. As soon as Eric entered the room, Harrison's smile flashed to full power, and his energy level? Care Bear on steroids. He brought Eric drinks, snacks, doted on him like he was Ariana Grande. Eric made Harrison sing every scale, every song, from slow, intimate pieces to country to R&B. When I entered Wednesday night, we nodded at each other. Benji, take a look at this for 15 minutes, then it's your turn. He handed me a Billy Joel song, Honesty. I'd never heard before. I pulled it up on my phone and listened while I helped the guys build the railing on the balcony. The set designer wanted it to look like stone. That would be up to the painters. Meaning me, probably tomorrow or Friday. The pile of lumber was noticeably smaller. The air smelled of sawdust and beef chimichangas. Somebody had cracked open a beer, the half-open container sitting on the steps. Harrison sang Honesty, leaning into the chorus. First he did it as a jazz riff, then slowed it down like he was crooning in a cheap bar. Let's give your voice a rest, Eric said, turning to me. Benji, your turn. I shrugged at the guys. Sorry. One of the guys snorted. I've got money on this. A couple of them chuckled, low and warm, the kind of sound that made the empty theater feel less empty. I set my phone to record. Later, I had to hear what I actually sounded like. Was Eric right? Ready, I said, sitting down next to Martha to read off her music. Eric nodded. Harrison leaned on one hip, his smile smug. You don't have to be nervous, Martha whispered. I've got your back. Does it show? I whispered back. Her slight smile answered my question. She played the intro. I joined in, keeping pace with the music. I was glad I'd previewed the song because the melody came easy, and the words. I let them flow through me, imagining what Billy Joel had originally intended. At the final chorus, the pianist became confused and stopped playing. then restarted 20 seconds later. I kept singing, letting my voice fill the silence. When we finished, I realized the guys had stopped working and were listening. Heat flooded my cheeks, my neck, and every part of my body. "Sorry," I mumbled. "I'm not very good." The pianist whispered, "Good job, anyway." I didn't believe her. "That will be all," Eric said, his face stone. "Harrison, your turn." Harrison had an odd, triumphant smile scowling across his face. He was being asked to perform again. He was the teacher's favorite. I'd only sung it once, and I was done. Good thing I had a day job. Shutting my phone down, I wandered over to the set. The guys had resumed hammering and measuring, checking diagrams and notes. The railing waited. I should have stayed with the broom handle. At least the broom listened. Chapter 10. Atop the theater, on the part of the roof over the stage, the highest part of the building, reachable only by ladder, the crew had built an open-air lounge. 2 tables with oversized beach umbrellas, a couple of couches, an easy chair someone rescued from a curb, even a fridge and microwave tucked inside a garden shed. Twinkling lights hung from the edges of the umbrellas, a little midnight constellation floating above Vegas. Cigarette smoke drifted past me, mixing with garlic from the Italian place down the street. I leaned over the marquee and stared at the people wandering 3 stories below. A man walked his dog, stopping to talk to a woman in a dark green coat. The sky glowed with the city's light, a permanent false dawn. Why had I ever believed I could be more than a wage slave? Why had I thought I was someone special? Singing, with my voice? What a joke. I opened a beer and took a long swig. What had Grandma said about ducks? Something about checking if it quacked. I should have checked. "I figured you'd be up here," Martha said, climbing the ladder. "Eric says it's your turn. You know Rocket Man?" "No." "Harrison can't handle it." "And Eric thinks I can?" "Don't worry, I've got your back. Think of it like karaoke, with a talent scout as judge." She bit her lip and disappeared down the ladder. That same sinking feeling settled in my stomach. The only reason they'd want me again was to give Harrison a breather. I followed her. The railing was 2/3 done. The stairs were now permanently attached and ready for painting. Somebody had spilled glue on the black painted floor, and one of the crew was wiping it up. I pulled up the song on my phone and listened to it. Originally recorded more than 50 years ago by Elton John, it was considered a legend and covered by artists at least 200 times. "Last song of the night," Eric said, stretching his back. "Are you up for it?" There was something in Eric's eyes, a tired weariness, but also hope, maybe. I took a copy of the music, read through it. "Don't expect much," I apologized. I sat down with Martha and cleared my throat. She played the opening chord, B major. I harmonized with it. Why was I doing this? I'm not a performer. Rocket Man wasn't a love song, but I'd sing it for Eric. Maybe he'd understand that I'm not what he hopes, but I do want to get to know him. I sang the unfamiliar song, singing only to Eric. I poured my feelings into each word, into each note. Chapter 11. The song flowed through me. Rocket Man wasn't about space or distance. It was about a man living between 2 selves and afraid to be in either one. Elton John had been performing this song years before he publicly came out, carrying a private life the world wouldn't learn about until much, much later. The song mirrored that split, the stage persona soaring, the real man still hidden, something every gay man or woman understands instinctively, me included. Somewhere in the middle, It stopped being a cover and turned into a ballad. For the last chorus, Martha lifted her hands from the keys on purpose, leaving me exposed. My voice carried through the theater, rising into the rafters. Hammers stopped, the crew froze mid-swing, and stared. When the final notes faded, the silence felt thick enough to touch. "Good job," the pianist whispered. Eric turned away sharply. The crew grumbled among themselves, then broke into scattered claps. Harrison had gone pale. "Sorry," I mumbled. "I didn't have time to practice the lyrics." Stunned silence is a cliché, but it was accurate. It was so quiet, I heard the hum of the air conditioner, the refrigerator cycling in the other room, even a car passing out front. Martha gave me a sideways hug. "You did it again." "What?" I asked. "Proved I can't sing?" "No, silly. Nailed it first try. Harrison spent half an hour with those lyrics and still couldn't get them right. You sure you haven't taken lessons?" "Stop teasing," I said, but the look on Eric's face made me pause. Had he just wiped tears from his eyes? Eric hit play on his recorder and piped the audio through the speakers. A man's voice, my voice, filled the room. "Told you," Eric whispered, taking my hand. Harrison glared at me, at Eric, and muttered, "My wife is expecting me," and walked out. Chapter 12. I lay in bed in my apartment, waiting for my alarm to go off. Morning shift at DIY warehouse loomed. Christmas displays to drag to the front entrance, fake trees shedding glitter everywhere, the kind of job that eats an entire morning. But what kept me awake was the expression on Eric's face. It was like he'd seen a ghost, his cousin, alive again for a moment before everything fell apart, and in his eyes was something I hadn't seen in an adult. They were wide, unbelieving, filled with wonder, the look of a kid on Christmas morning seeing a bicycle under the tree. He had focused on me. I rolled over and checked my phone. 2 hours awake, 4 hours until the alarm. A long night. I got up, opened the fridge, and found Oreos and ice cream. I ate both for the next 30 minutes, humming Rocket Man under my breath. I could sing, and sing well. What was I supposed to do with that knowledge? Did I want to perform? With Eric's help, I could make albums, maybe become a YouTube sensation, spend years touring the country. But was that the life I wanted? Grandma always said, "There's a lot of people begging you to buy their horse, but it's pretty useless if you're on a boat." Did Eric only like me because I could sing? Because I sounded like his cousin? Was there a future between us if I didn't want to perform? I broke an Oreo in half and scooped up a bit of ice cream onto the cookie. The chocolate and cold sweetness were perfection. They didn't hold any answers, but they tasted good. I thought about texting Eric, asking if there could be an us if I chose to stay normal. Harrison wanted to be a star. That was his dream. But was it mine? Some people lived for center stage. Others didn't. Which one was I? I pulled apart another Oreo and studied the two halves. One cookie with cream, one without. 2 futures, 2 selves. Which one was mine? Eric was a talent scout. He was paid to woo people to the dark side, not because he liked them, but so the company could profit. Was anything he said, outside of business, real, or simply a pretty promise? No matter what I said, he'd move on to the next town, the next search, the next voice. With my fingernail, I carved a little smile into the cream. It came out more like a winky face. I smiled back. Would Eric like me as me? Regular me? Or was it a performance? And who was exactly? And who exactly was regular me? I looked at the winky face and realized something. I didn't have a dream. I had stability, a good job, my own place, a comfortable life, a car, and friends. The team at DIY Warehouse was more of a family than my own, and I loved working with the guys at the Playhouse. My family was a little weird, so I made a new one. People rarely noticed me, and I was okay living in the shadows. People who stood out got used, burned out, and eventually crashed. Look at Eric's cousin. Look at all the one-hit wonders. I didn't want to walk that road. Maybe my life was safe, and maybe it was boring. But I didn't live for the camera flashes or spotlights. Leave that to the Harrisons of the world. Later, on my lunch break, I wrote and erased 3 different texts before settling on one. Dinner at Gordon's Gourmet Burgers. I'm buying. Have some questions. Off work at 2. Meet you there at 3. My stomach flipped. Maybe this was a mistake, or maybe it was the first real choice I'd made in a long time. Would Eric understand? Would he even like regular me? Was what we shared already over before it even started? I hit send before I lost my nerve. A thumbs up emoji appeared 15 seconds later. Chapter 13. Though the air was cool, I sat at one of the picnic benches in front of Gordon's Gourmet Burgers, home of the nuclear cholesterol bomb. The spicy Inferno burgers flavored the air. French fries were one of their specialties, fresh cut and sprinkled with custom spices. They were a legend. I debated what I would say, rehearsed it, made notes on my phone, changed my mind, rehearsed it again, and waited. At 3:15, Eric hadn't shown up. I texted, "Can I order for you? What would you like?" I counted all the police cars that drove past. 7. I stopped my toe from tapping. Twice. I even bought a Dubai chocolate shake. By 3:30, the shake was gone, and the anxious twist in my gut told me this was a bust. I'd been stood up. So that was the truth then. Eric only wanted my voice. As I was walking to my car, carrying an order of French fries to go, I received 3 texts at the same time. The first was from my uncle. "Before you arrive, can you pick up 2 dozen donuts? I'll pay you back." Of course my uncle wanted donuts. Was it an impromptu cast celebration? I sent a thumbs up emoji. Then Martha texted, "OMG, hurry!" The third was from Eric. Part of me wanted to delete it without reading. The other part was relieved. It read, "I'm at the theater. Sorry, I should have texted sooner. Something incredible happened. Grab me a burger and hurry to the theater. It's seriously urgent. Explain when you get here." This is Vegas. Weird things are an hourly event. But donuts? Something incredible had happened? Hurry? There wasn't a show tonight. We were getting ready for Winter Wonderland, the musical. The cast needed to practice while the rest of us put the sets and props together. What was I about to walk into? I wasn't angry or relieved. Confusion replaced them both. I bought a couple of burgers and more fries before setting off to St. Honoré Donuts. Chapter 14. A dozen cars were parked behind the theater, including Eric's rental BMW and Harrison's Prius. The marquee lit the street, advertising the new play and its starting date. I parked behind the theater, Harrison's voice carrying the melody of Bing Crosby's Winter Wonderland, rising louder than the street noise. I carried the donuts and burgers through the open back door. The entire cast stood on the stage, holding scripts and cups of coffee. The stage crew lounged by their tools. When they saw me, a few hurried over to help with the donuts. Harrison leaned on the piano, sheet music in hand, singing. Martha played, though she smiled when she saw me. Eric and my uncle stood nearby, along with another man, taller than me, hair trimmed professionally short, black slacks, white shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows. Something about him seemed familiar. Eric saw me and smiled. He approached and helped me set the food on the table. "I'm glad you're here. You don't know how much this means to me." Not sure what to make of that, I nodded toward the stranger. "Who's that?" Eric beamed. I told my cousin about you, about your voice, and I convinced him to come hear you sing. I nodded. Now I remembered him. The video of him singing had been a younger version, longer hair, a kid in college. This was the same man, but now an adult. His eyes held a cautious hope. Hi, he said. I'm John. Eric spoke very highly of you. Harrison's voice skipped, but he continued singing. Hi, I said. What do you say to something like that? Welcome to Sahara Sands Community Playhouse. The noise on the stage silenced, as if the rafters were listening. My heart began beating faster, as if I'd run a race. John looked down a moment, then at his cousin. Eric wants me to hear your voice. Invited me here. Says you're a prodigy. Harrison stopped singing entirely. I blew out a breath and tried not to blush. I'm not that good. Eric walked over and handed me a copy of Winter Wonderland. Gives you a chance to show off a little. Please, it's important. Show me what you can do, John said. Harrison stomped towards us, mouth in scowl mode. What's wrong with the way I've been singing it? I've tried every variation I know. Loud, soft, intimate, joyful. What do you want? Eric faced him. You're good, but it's all performance. I'm looking for soul. I've given you that. I've poured everything into singing. I'm ready for more than the stage. Why can't you see that? Eric lowered his eyebrows. Let me show you what your voice misses. Benji? I sat next to Martha and she gave me a tiny smile. She played the opening chords. I hummed. It was as if the entire theater held its breath. I rubbed my palms on my pants, held the page for Martha, and took a deep breath. And she whispered, Bring down the curtain. I waited for the right moment, looked at Eric, and decided I'd sing to him, for him. No one else mattered. I didn't know where we stood, or if there even was an us. I sang, letting the feelings flow through my voice, projecting the love inherent in the song. It was less a pop song and more a love ballad. I thought about the original 1934 lyrics, a couple in love walking through a snowy park, and tried to let that warmth guide my voice. When I arrived at the chorus, a second voice joined mine. Rough, unused for years. John joined in. Our voices were so similar that we immediately harmonized. The moment became magic. Eric wiped an eye, Martha embellished the tune, and the cast had their phones out, recording. Harrison's eyes widened, and his jaw dropped. The theater filled with joy and love, and our intertwined voices created wonder. All too soon, we came to the final chorus. I stood facing John, and we sang it together, letting the final notes fly into the sky. Chapter 15. Eric and I sat atop the old theater, relaxing on the beat-up sofas in the informal cast lounge. We were finally eating our burgers. Thanks for what you did, he said, his voice soft and vulnerable. John's come alive again. Your uncle wants him in the performance. You too. You have an amazing voice. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, I said, quietly looking away. Eric leaned forward, focusing on me. I'm not a performer, I continued. That path isn't for me. I don't want that life. Eric nodded. I guess what I want to know, I said. Would you still want to get to know me even if I didn't want to be famous? He shifted positions until he was next to me. Maybe you could perform for smaller audiences? Not big crowds, just small, intimate events. How big of an audience? I asked. Me. Our kiss was natural and easy, and some part of me was aware when Martha called. They're up here, but let's give them some private time. The end. Thank you, my friends, for joining me and Bentley for this story. I appreciate it. It was fun to write and fun to read. I'll see you next time. Peace, my friends. I love you all.